Welcome to Ulcerative Colitis, Autoimmune Healing Journey. I am your journey guide, Jay India, and this is a supportive, positive environment where we can heal together. Please note I am not a doctor or health professional of any kind, and my guest is also not a doctor or health professional. If you would like to attempt something mentioned in this episode, please consult your physician or health professional first. Today we are discussing my UC journey and fitness and exercise for UC and IBD with Anthony Padilla. Anthony, okay, first of all, I have to put on my glasses for this because this is a really good intro. So hold on, let me make sure I'm reading it right. One of my glasses. Okay. Anthony Padilla positively impacts people's souls through nutrition, fitness, biohacking, and emotional excellence. He coaches people in achieving optimal health and fitness by challenging their bodies and minds to reach their maximum potential. This includes an emphasis on proper nutrition with non-GMO whole foods, ideal intake of water, and a growth mindset. He also engages his clients in corrective exercises to prevent and relieve pain. Last but not least, he coaches youth athletes in maximizing agility, quickness, speed, strength, and a great attitude. Welcome, Anthony.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I was excited to have you on. I'm excited you said yes because you've been such a wealth of information for our listeners, and I really appreciate that. And I also want to say Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you, too.
Thank you. Anything exciting going on in 2024? Anything you're really looking forward to, or you're just kind of killing it with goals, or what do you think?
Not really. I don't make resolutions. I just do try to, it's kind of cliche, but try to get 1% better every day. And also looking at this being an election year, I'm expecting some craziness out there.
This being an election year, and obviously this is not a political podcast, but I'm curious to see how it goes because we're both Americans and everyone's so exhausted from the last election year. I'm curious to see if it's going to ramp up again or it's going to be much quieter. So I agree with that. 2024 is going to be interesting in the U.S.
And just one comment, again, not a political podcast,
sure,
but
please.
I read a book a couple years ago called The Fourth Turning. And it's Neil Howe, and I can't remember the name of the other author. But they wrote a book prior to that called Generations, and they kind of followed along world history in over hundreds of years. And they talked about the first, second, third, and fourth turning. And the fourth turning is when all the chaos happens. And according to their demographics, we're in the fourth turning right now. And so things should be pretty crazy through about 2028, 2029, 2030, something like that. So keep an eye out for that.
That is so interesting. I love that recommendation. And it's funny, I listen to sometimes a psychic that is basically called the modern Nostradamus. And he says that this is the worst decade that we are going to have through 2030. So strap in, people.
Yeah.
It's about to get worse.
Yep.
Anyway, moving on to more positive things. Please tell us about your UC warrior journey. When did your symptoms start? What do you think caused UC? So if we can start there.
Sure. So, I didn't know what was happening to me, but this was spring of 21. And I started noticing a little bit of blood in my stool. And I thought, oh, well, I'm just getting old. It'll go away. Well, it didn't go away. It persisted and persisted slowly and got gradually worse to the point where now I'm, blood in the toilet just filled up and fatigue and energy. And what really did it for me, one particular morning I woke up and I was 5 pounds lighter than I was the day before. And I thought, uh-oh, something's not good here. And I've always been kind of a do-it-yourselfer, just in every aspect of life. So I went online and did a lot of searches, not on Google, because they censor stuff. I like DuckDuckGo. I like Swiss Cows. Those are two pretty good websites or search engines where you can find alternative health stuff. And so I determined, oh my gosh, I have every symptom of UC. So I started giving myself extra nutrients, iron and B12 and so on, and that kind of helped, but the blood was still coming. Then I started looking into everything from should I go the natural route entirely? Should I look at pharmaceuticals? And I also looked really deeply at spirituality, shamanism in particular. Have you ever heard of Alberto Villoldo by chance?
I have not.
So he's a really interesting guy. He's Cuban, and he has a PhD in medical anthropology, and he's a shaman. So this guy really knows how to marry the two sides. And his website is called fourwinds.com. It's the Four Winds Society. And so I looked at a lot of his stuff, and I gained a ton of knowledge looking at the spiritual, emotional connection to all of our ailments. So that's when I really started incorporating walking in nature, deep breathing practices, cutting out, for a couple of weeks anyway, I cut out all plant foods. Then I found the work of Sean Baker, and I went completely carnivore for about 2 weeks, and that helped a ton. But what I found is over that 2-week period, I was sleeping terribly. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, like, what is going on? I finally determined that I was having cortisol spikes in the middle of the night, because although the human body doesn't require carbohydrates to survive, because we can go through gluconeogenesis where it breaks down proteins, some carbs are good. So I started adding in a little bit of sauerkraut, some other asparagus, some well-tolerated vegetables. And so the blood loss started to diminish, and I was getting better. Something else I did at that point is I ratcheted my workouts way back. No more heavy weights, more light weights, a lot of walking, a lot of outside time, lots of grounding, or it's also called earthing. Living where I live, I train most of my clients in Newport Beach. And the gym where I train most of them
And we're just going to tell people, because we have a global audience, Newport Beach, California.
Oh, yes.
So you guys know.
And so the beach is 5 minutes from the gym. So I can go down there, take my shoes and socks off, walk in the sand. I know not everyone lives in that type of environment, but as long as you're touching the dirt, the grass, the sand, even concrete works well. And so that kind of brought me up. Then I found... Okay, I'll tell you this part of the story. It's kind of wacky. I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good now, but I want to find someone who can get me over the finish line. So I went to one of our local gyms here, is 24 Hour Fitness, and it was a Sunday afternoon. I would normally never be there at that time of day. The only reason I was there is that my son had a basketball tournament across the street, and then we had about a 3-hour break in between games. So I thought, I'm going to walk over to 24 Hours. I'm going to lay in the sauna, do my breathing practice, shower up, and then go back to the basketball game. So I'm laying in there, doing my breathing practice, had my eyes closed, and I heard the door open and close, and somebody came in. I finished my breathing practice, and I sat up, and there was a guy sitting in there. So I was about ready to leave, and he looks at me and says, hey, that breathing practice you did was fantastic. And I said, oh, thank you. I'm just trying to heal myself and stay healthy. And he goes, oh, what are your symptoms? I told him what I had. And he goes, oh, well, I'm a functional medicine doctor. I'm like, come on. So we start talking, and so I sit back down, and I said, really, what do you specialize in? Oh, I specialize in all things IBD. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So the universe provides when you need. So anyhow, I looked the guy up the next day. I just showed up at his office, and I hired him. And so he did what's called an organic acids test, which is a urine test. He did a stool test. It's PCR based, so he said he likes that one because it also tests for dead tissues that still might be there from when you had the UC. Did a couple other blood tests, and he goes, well, you've done a great job, because if you had UC, you don't have it anymore. But he showed me all my other stuff. I had little overgrowths, everything in the yeast family. I had some E. coli, some staph, a few other things. It wasn't debilitating for me, but it wasn't allowing me to operate optimally. So he got me on some supplements, and I continued doing what I was doing, and here we are. And I'd say I'm probably 90% now. So it's been quite an adventure, and I've learned a ton, and I've learned a ton from you, and I really appreciate you doing this podcast. And I found you because when I had UC, I went looking on podcasts for any specialists in this area, and I found a smattering of gastro guys doing this stuff. But when I found you, I thought, oh my gosh, this is real. She has embraced the conventional medicine but she really likes the natural stuff. And so I really liked your open-mindedness and your openness too about your journey. And so it's been a big help for me as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for saying that. That's such a huge compliment, especially from you, where I feel like I get so much information from you. There's times where I have DM'd you and been like, Anthony, can you tell me the answer to this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. So you gave us such a wealth of information. I think it's really interesting. And by the way, Anthony, if you see me writing things down, it's because you said something great and I'm writing it down. I don't want to forget it. But you said, when I started to have blood, I said to myself, I'm getting old. And, you know, I feel like with UC IBD, we always find an excuse first. And I think that's a natural thing to do because you just don't want to believe it. And you don't want to jump to conclusions. Probably in your, I would say coming from your perspective, you're so in shape and you're so fit that I would go to that conclusion too. You know, where, okay, I wouldn't, I'd be like, I train people every day. I train every day. I do, you know, I look great, whatever, that I would never, which is why it's such an invisible disease. But I think that's really interesting because we all have stories like that where we're like, no, there's no way. It's just, I'm getting old or I have a little hemorrhoid or, so I think that's great that even someone like you, who's so at the top of his game physically, would think that too. I think that's amazing. And then the other thing I thought was interesting that you mentioned, I'm ignorant to this, is the search engines. You said go on Swiss Cows. What is it called?
Swiss Cows.
Okay.
That's a good one. But my primary one is DuckDuckGo.
Oh, I've heard of DuckDuckGo. Okay.
Yeah. Those are both great. Because again, not to go way down the conspiracy rabbit hole here, but Big Pharma is a big advertiser on Google. And so...
No, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about. They don't control anything.
So as with many things in life, if you just follow the money, then they know what side their bread's being buttered on. So then you can make an informed decision. So for example, if I'm looking for a local restaurant recommendation or something like that, I'll go to Google. But if I'm looking for some health information, I go to DuckDuckGo.
Thank you for, I'm going to actually now do this because this was one of my frustrations when I started to have UC and I couldn't find anything online was every time you look something up, it's always Big Pharma.
Yeah.
You know, the natural stuff is all pushed behind or it's hardly there. So thank you for mentioning that. That's actually a huge deal. Now, with your UC journey, and if you don't want to get into that, if you don't want to get into this, that's fine. But if you want to say a little bit about it, did you feel that there was an emotional aspect to it?
Absolutely. I've felt that there's an emotional component to all of our physical health. But as I really went down this rabbit hole on this journey, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is. I mentioned Alberto Villoldo earlier. That just really crystallized it for me because then here's a guy with a PhD in medical anthropology and he's a shaman, so he's able to marry the two together. You just finished your 2-part series on The Body Keeps the Score. I'd heard of that book a long time ago as well. So yeah, totally. For me, I grew up in a chaotic household. Parents were married. They're divorced now. They've been divorced like 30 years. But growing up, my sisters and I were raised by our 2 parents. And what I do recall is up until about age 5, parents arguing constantly, just a lot of chaos. But then from about age 5 forward, they just didn't talk anymore. Now, when you're a kid, you just think, well, this is just how it is. Well, it was in my life, but you don't realize how, as a child, you develop coping mechanisms to get you through that point, which are good for that point, but then we carry those into adulthood, and they're not good at that point. So I was pretty good at repressing stuff, and so I think all that pent-up stuff just was there, and not surprisingly, in the 7 chakra system within shamanism, the root chakra, which is the one which is at the base, which is in the colon, that has tied to a lot of, anxiety and fear and whatnot. And that's where I had it. So,
and the chakras are the 7 energy centers of the body. So
yes,
go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So as I incorporate all that stuff, I'm like, wow, this is real. And it's certainly been real for me. So yeah, what really did it was my wife left me in February of 2014. And it was done in a really ugly way. And it really just slapped me in the face and just took me down emotionally. And I think that was the final straw. Even though it was 2014, I think that really kicked off the spring of 2021 for the UC to finally come to fruition. So it's been a great emotional journey for me as well. I let it all out. One of my very good clients, when I was crying, and I cried for every day for 4 months straight after my wife left me. And she told me, Anthony, you let those tears go because you're letting go of emotion that goes all the way back to your childhood. And you don't even realize it. And I was like, wow. So I did. And it was such a vulnerable spot for me. I've always been, the fit, doing, type A guy. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my edge. And I did for a while. But in losing that edge, I was able to come back stronger, wiser, better, and just so much of a more complete person. They talk about the wounded healer. Sometimes you got to take 2 steps back or 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. And that's been my journey. So yeah, the emotional component, I think, drives really all of our physical stuff. And we can choose to listen to the messages and feel through them and work through them, or keep stuffing them and keep getting bad stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for being so open and honest, because I tell people all the time that I think I'm going to make a big statement here and say 100% of us who have UC have gone through some sort of trauma, some sort of emotional experience that we're stuffing down into our colons, which I just talked about, like you said, on The Body Keeps the Score, those 2 episodes. So thank you for confirming that for me and for everyone.
For
all right.
Sure.
So thank you for sharing the UC journey. Now I want to move on to what you do for a living, which is very cool. You are a fitness guru and human performance coach. You'd be so sad if I was your client. You'd be you'd be like, this is pathetic. And the irony of the situation is I have a brother who is a CrossFit champion. He goes to CrossFit competitions all over the country, and he has no body fat, and it's like, it's just crazy. So he couldn't be more opposite. I'm the yoga girl. So Anyway, you have an interesting story about how you got started in the fitness industry. So I'd love for you to tell the listeners, because I found this kind of cool.
Okay. So I've always been involved in fitness. When I was age 12, I started lifting weights because I started playing Pop Warner football when I was 8. And I was always a smaller kid. I'm 5'8", 160. That's my natural, where my body wants to be. And I was really strong, but I was a smaller kid. And so I played football for 9 years, all the way through high school. And I just wanted to get bigger and stronger for football. So that's what started my, fitness journey. And so my dad bought me, depending on the age of the listener or viewer watching this, bought me the old school Sears weight set to keep in my bedroom. Now, back then, Sears made these weight sets where they were...
You did not say Sears.
So, you go into a gym now.
Back.
So you go to a gym now, the gyms are made of iron. The Sears weight set, the weight was concrete surrounded by plastic. And so I had that weight set at home, and I just worked out on my own. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was getting bigger and stronger, and it worked. So that kind of started it. And when football was over after high school, I just kept working out because I thought, well, then it became aesthetic. I want to be the fittest dude on the beach, which I usually was. And my buddies appreciated that because I would attract some of the opposite sex. And
Baywatch over there.
Yeah, totally. I did make a cameo on Baywatch too, but we won't get into that now.
No, oh my God, you've got to tell us about that later. That trumps everything you just said. That trumps everything. But you got to share that with us later. But
I'll just share it real quick. I'll share it real quick.
Yeah, please.
An apartment I was renting back in this must have been the early 90s. There was 2 sisters that lived upstairs, and the younger one wanted to be a big star, and so she was getting up one day and she goes, hey, I'm going to go to Hollywood to register with this extra casting agency. You want to go? I was like, yeah, I'll go for the ride. I'll sit in getting you in the carpool lane. So we went. I went in with her. She did her thing. We were leaving. And the agent, she literally ran out of the building to me. She goes, hey, did you just sign up? And I said, no, I just came to hang out with her. She goes, well, will you sign up? I was like, okay. So I signed up, and bing, bang, boom, 2 weeks, I'm on Baywatch.
Stop. That's amazing.
I was an extra, and they had me kind of way in the background. And I remember the director called cut. He said, hey, we want to rejigger the people here. And so he looked and said, I want our biggest, buffest guys here in the shot. He calls me, you come over here. So I was right in the shot. I was there to protect the star of that particular episode, and it was fun.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Of course you were on Baywatch. Of course. What? I brought that up because I'm intuitive, and I was like, yeah, of course they would select him. Now, I have a quick question for you. Mm-hmm. Was your friend pissed that they selected you? Was she jealous?
You know, I wasn't very intuitive at the time. She may have been, and I just didn't notice. Because I did that. I did a few other shows, and she wasn't doing it. Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah. Damn. I'm just thinking because I would have been jealous.
Yeah.
I'd have been like, what? That's the danger when you invite someone to an audition. I've heard that before. You're not the first. Anyway, I digress. So you were saying that we were talking about how you became a performance coach and all that. So go ahead.
So
you were lifting weights from
up.
Sears.
Yeah. And went to college, majored in business, and I just kept working out on the side. And I think in the back of my mind, I knew I enjoyed fitness and health. I thought, well, that's not a real job. I can't make a living doing that. So I went the business route. I sold into the home improvement industry, Home Depot and places like that. Left it, got certified as a trainer. I was a trainer for a year. One of my clients who I was training hired me to go into his company selling again into the home improvement industry. I really didn't want to, but I was like, okay. Did that for 2 more years, and then I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I kept doing my continuing ed to maintain my certifications because I thought maybe at some point I'll buy a gym or whatever. And then one day I've had several different jobs. I was a financial advisor for 5 years, had my Series 7, my life insurance license. And it was, as a career, it was fine. Didn't really tickle my fancy, but it was fine. And then the gal who mentored me there, she brought me in the office one day. She said, hey, I want to talk to you. You don't seem like you're very passionate about this industry. And I said, well, I'm not, but who is? And she laughed. She goes, true. She said, but, I notice when someone stops you in the hall and asks you anything about health, fitness, nutrition, you just light up and you're so enthusiastic. And she goes, no, life is short. We should all pursue what we really are passionate about.
Yes.
And I said, well, I've already got all this training and I can't turn back now. I'm too old. I was 36. And she laughed, and she said, I wish we were sitting here right now with a retired guy who was 65, who worked in some job he didn't really care for, and he could hear you say, oh, I'm too old, I can't turn back. He would tell you, you got your whole life in front of you. At this point, I had no wife, no kids, no mortgage, nothing. And I was like, okay, I'm taking the leap. So I put it out there to a couple of my buddies. My one friend said, oh, you know what? I just hired a gal who was a trainer out of this gym. She's going to come work for me. They have an opening in that gym in Corona Del Mar. So I went down there, interviewed. Weird story. One of their trainers, also, in addition to the gal who was taken out, one of their trainers, he was an Army fitness guy. He died. Carbon monoxide poisoning at Lake Havasu in Arizona. So they had an opening. So I was already training a few people on the side. And then I picked up his clients. And then the financial advising firm where I was working, 6 of my associates said, well, if you're going to be a trainer, can you train me? So within 3 months, my schedule was full. And I was like, okay, I think I'm doing the right thing. And that was 20 years ago. Yeah.
And look at you now. And now you're training people on the beach. And that sounds just so dreamy. Yeah. So what would you say is the best exercise for the listeners or anyone with UC, IBD, autoimmune, and how can we, it's a new year, right? So how can we increase our audio? How can we increase our cardio and also our fitness goals for the new year? Like, how should we do that if you're someone like me who's more of a slow yoga person?
Great question. So, again, it's cliche. So what's the best exercise? The one that you'll do. I'd like to expand on that more. Although we really talked more about weights and football and fitness, that kind of thing. I did go to yoga as a participant for about 15 years. And then my instructor moved to Florida. So then I started doing mat Pilates for about another 10 years. And then COVID happened and they closed everything. And so I haven't done either of those since that time. But what should we do? Well, as I said earlier, when I had UC, I ratcheted my workouts way back. this is very individual, like most things in life. We can go with here's the stated thing that works, but you got to experiment with yourself. So, again, I live by the beach, so I can go outside all the time. Most people can't do that. So any movement, if you're indoors, body weight squats, push-ups, simple stuff, exercise bands. You can tie them up to a pole. You can tie them up to the banister on the stairway. I'm looking over there because our stairs are over there. Anything like that. And you asked specifically about cardio. So it's not necessary, and it's actually not even good to do, marathon type of training and that constant pounding on the body. One of the guys I listen to a lot on podcasts is Ben Greenfield, and he's done Spartan races and Ironman triathlons, all this kind of stuff. And the first time he had a heart scan, he showed some calcification, which is very common, and he's only 40 years old now. So it's very common of people who push to the limit like that.
Ben Greenfield's only 40?
Yeah. He was one of the first guys.
Older.
Yeah, well,
with all due respect to Ben, I love Ben. Okay, I, with all due respect to him, I thought he was more like not 40. Okay, interesting to know.
And he's really throttled back as well these days. He's emphasizing a lot more sauna and cold plunge, that type of stuff as well.
I do that.
Yeah. So, so the cardio. Have you heard the term Zone 2 cardio? That's kind of the buzzword these days.
Of course I haven't, Anthony. Come on, you know who you're talking to. No.
So Zone 2 cardio is basically when you're at 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. And, without doing a whole VO2 max thing where you go on a treadmill and they put the mask on you, the basic heart rate determinant for everyone is you take the number 220, subtract your age, and that's your maximum heart rate. Then you take
220 and
minus
subtract your age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, so that's your max, and then you want to take 60% of that. So then between 60 and 70% of that is your Zone 2 cardio range. And just to give you an idea, that's a brisk walk, maybe walking upstairs, not running upstairs, maybe 10 bodyweight squats instead of 50 bodyweight squats. You can still talk, and you might be a little winded, but you're not dying. So that's a great way to get started, and also a great way, too, to challenge your body when you have an autoimmune or you have any kind of UC or anything like that, because you can still do something without pushing yourself over the edge. Because exercise stress can be good unless you're pushing too hard, and there's too much stress, and that's not good. So Zone 2 cardio is a good place to be, 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate.
That is so amazing. I've never heard of any of this. This is so informative and so helpful. And it's nice to know that you don't have to feel like you have to be a marathon runner.
Yeah.
And I want to say, Anthony, in my defense, I want to impress you a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if it will impress you, but
Let's see.
I'm going to try here. Okay, so let's see. So when I was 17, I ran track and cross country, and I could run a mile under 6 minutes.
That's really good.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was really good. I was all county and everything. Back in the day, I could actually get shit done. Today, it's not as exciting, but yeah. So
That's fantastic.
Thank you. The problem was I was in this really big high school, and they had nationally ranked runners there. So in a smaller high school, I would have been a star, but in my high school, I was good, but I wasn't anything great. The girl before me was running it in less than 5 minutes. She was one of the top runners in the nation. So
That's
anyway,
amazing,
yeah, I know. Well, anyway, I wasn't blessed that way, but so yeah, I kind of like what you said about the brisk cardio walk, especially for those of us who are living in the Northeast. It's cold. It's cold right now. Now, I understand if you're one of my listeners living up in Saskatchewan, you'd probably want to stay inside and do push-ups and everything Anthony said, and I agree with that. Absolutely. But so for example, today it's 50 degrees. It's sunny. It's beautiful. For Anthony, it's probably freezing. For us, it's normal. So what you do is you just wrap yourself up and you go for a brisk walk. And I like what you said about the brisk walk, just because then you can get the grounding in. Yes, your feet are not naked, so you're not walking on the concrete naked or the grass naked, but at least you're getting grounding in nature that way. What do you think about that?
Well, the term grounding by definition means you are touching the ground, not your soles of your shoes. But the other great thing we can do is that, again, not going down the whole rabbit hole here, but humans evolved in the sun. Now, of course, I'm a darker skinned person. I did my genetic testing, and I'm mostly Spanish, and the next big chunk is Mexican, and there's a whole mishmash of other stuff. So for those of us who evolved...
That's why you were on Baywatch.
Yeah. For those of us who evolved closer to the equator, we have more melanin, so we have darker skin. We can metabolize carbs more easily because if you're walking around now, you just pick a fruit and you eat it because it's growing all year round. But my point is that in the sun. So if you do go outside for a brisk walk, if you're all bundled up, do not wear sunglasses because our eyes are actually part of our brain. That's the exposed part of our brain. And when the sunlight comes in, it activates the melatonin in our body. By the way, just a quick aside, most everyone has been told that the melatonin is produced in our pineal gland, which is true, but the vast majority of it is produced in our mitochondria, which is due to sun exposure. So if you're wearing sunglasses, you're cutting off that communication with the sun. So your body won't know what time of day is it really, should I make more melatonin, should I make less, and so on and so forth. So don't look directly at the snow or at the sun. Unless it's first thing in the morning, you can look directly at the sun. It's low in the horizon. It's mostly red light, and so you can absorb that. But anyway, the point is, no matter what time of day you're walking, do it without glasses as much as possible. You can wear a hat, but you want that sunlight so that you can get the grounding from the sun without actually touching the ground.
That's perfect. Thank you. Because yes, you are correct. I used the term grounding incorrectly. I guess I meant more walking in nature and getting that nature exposure. But I like that. I like that idea of not wearing sunglasses and getting the exposure that way. So that's very smart. I didn't even think of that. And you guys also, living in the Northeast, for example, here's the deal. I just went through this with someone. I lived in Eastern Europe. Nothing can compare to that. It is so freaking cold. It is so dark all the time that when people are saying to me, oh, it's gray here in the winter, it's not gray here. There's beautiful blue skies out today. In the middle of February, there's beautiful blue skies. It's cold. It's freezing sometimes. But I really do like to bundle up. And I think that's important, is to bundle up and go out and walk if you can handle it. Because it's just, it's so nice to get outdoors some of the time. And we do have, like Anthony said, the beautiful snow that comes off the beautiful sun and the blue sky. It's nice to have all those things, especially if you suffer from seasonal affective disorder, which I do. So all of that really helps. I go out into the pasture, like you said, Anthony, in the morning, because we get incredible light in our cow pasture, and I'll stand there and just get the light for 15 minutes. And even that really helps me.
That's so good. Yeah. You mentioned seasonal affective disorder. My ex-wife is from Sweden. So you talk about dark, cold, long winters. I've been to there in the winter one time. I've been there summer many times, but in the winter, when it's kind of warm, people are bundled up and you see them, they'll just walk outside and just look at the sun, and they just stand there in the sun. If it's high in the sky, they'll close their eyes, but they just get that. Because again, if you think about all the tenets of ancestral health, we evolved in the sun, and it has so many healing properties and feel-good properties. And so, just get out. The Japanese have a term called forest bathing, and it's just being in nature.
Forest bathing. I like it.
Yeah.
I have a forest in the back of my house. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say I'm going forest bathing. It's pretty cool. I learned that today. Oh, I have a quick fact about the sun that I learned. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know that if the sun exploded or went away, there's an 8-minute lag between Earth and the sun? So if that happened, it would take 8 minutes to feel the effects here. I thought that was interesting.
That's a good fun fact.
Yeah.
If that does happen, please let me know. Give me 8 minutes to prepare for the end of the world.
Right. Yes, I'll tell you. That's so funny. Absolutely. So the only other thing I want to mention about what Anthony recommended, all incredible recommendations, is I had this in one of my questions and you answered it, but I just want to make sure I said it right in case people are like, but I had in one of my questions, besides the gym, can you give us a home practice? So if people are like, but what about the gym? What about the gym? Yes, the gym too. So I just wanted to point that out. If you have anything to say about that.
No, we can always find a way to move. And again, for someone like me who grew up in gyms, my mentality is, well, I have to go to the gym to work out. But as I become older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I realize as long as I'm moving, I mean, I'm looking over here to the right, I have stairs. That's something I could do if it were cold and rainy here. Walk up the stairs and walk down, or run up the stairs and walk down. I mentioned the body weight squats. You can even do a wall sit where you just, you back up against the wall and you sit there. There's lots of ways. It's movement. It's just movement.
It's movement, and it helps our lymph. It helps everything. But I would always tell flight attendants, never take the elevator. Walk the stairs when you get to the hotel. Walk the stairs up, walk the stairs down. You have to take your suitcase and do it. That's good weight. So I would always do that too. It's great
suggestion. Excellent suggestion. Yeah.
Look at me giving fitness suggestions. Oh my gosh. Tell us about where we can find you and where we can get trained by you and the whole thing.
So I live in Orange County, California, in South Orange County, but I train most of my clients.
And guys, that's really nice. Sorry not to interrupt, but if you guys go and look at some of the shows from the past about Orange County, it's beautiful over there. So Anthony's very lucky. Anyway,
I'm blessed.
Continue.
Yeah, I was born in Orange, or I was born in LA, but moved to Orange County when I was 5. I've been here ever since.
Nice.
So it is beautiful. So South Orange County is where I am, and it's a great family community with my kids. But I built my practice in Newport Beach, and so I still commute up there. It's about a 30-minute commute. Well, 40 minutes if I go the way I like to go. Instead of the freeway, I like to go up PCH. So I go through Laguna Beach.
Oh, nice.
I go through Newport Coast.
I was going to say Laguna Beach.
Yeah, it's such a nice way to get the day started. So I'm up and down the coast. I train most of my clients in Newport, some here in South County. I did try a little bit of online training during COVID and just didn't work that very well. More of what I'm doing these days is a lot of health coaching, because as I get older and I experience more stuff, a lot of my clients who have been with me for 20 years and even some newer ones are having stuff, whether it be UC or other types of things. So health coaching can be done like this on the phone or on a Zoom type of call. But in person is where, if you want to find me, I'll be in Newport primarily.
And where can we find you online, a website?
So my Instagram is Anthony4Fit. That's the number 4Fit. It's a lot of stuff with my kids because they're both in high school, and I post a lot of their sporting things and whatnot. And I do have fitness stuff there as well. And my not so great website is just my name, AnthonyPadillaFitness.com. And that's it.
Okay, perfect. And I really like your Instagram. I think it's nice that you're a family man and you're so into your kids, and it's nice to see that. So
thank you.
For
we have
doing
a short
that.
time with them, and my time with them is almost done.
Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy? Right? You bring them home from the hospital, and then the next day they're graduating high school. It's crazy. I don't know. I don't have them. I like to act like I have them. I'm like, oh, it's crazy, right? No, I don't even know. But thank you so much. This was such a wealth of information. You are one of the highlights of this podcast for me because I was able to meet you and have you on this podcast and call you my friend. And I just really appreciate you. And I hope you know that. I just wanted to let you know that. And also, this episode, it may have, I like to sometimes name episodes, obviously the name Fitness with Anthony Padilla, but it may say my Baywatch cameo.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to do it. My David Hasselhoff moment, whatever, my Pamela Anderson moment, may have to do it because I love that so much. And Anthony, you know how this goes, but I'm just going to do it here. In my household, when we have a perfect shit, when it slides out of the toilet and you turn around and you go, wow, we call that a green heart day. Anthony, what do you wish all the listeners?
All your listeners and viewers, I wish you all a green heart day.
Thank you.
Thank you.